Welcome to today's Explainer. We are going to completely dismantle the psychological barriers keeping you from learning that new skill you've been dreaming about. Have you ever felt that intense spark of curiosity to learn a language, play an instrument, or pick up coding, only to let it completely fizzle out because you just couldn't find the time? Well, today, we're going to give you that time back. We're looking at a highly targeted blueprint drawn from top researchers, productivity experts, and rapid learning advocates to show you exactly how to go from absolute beginner to surprisingly competent in record time. Look, let's dive right in. If you're a busy professional or maybe a new parent, you've probably felt that crushing panic that you simply have zero free time to learn something completely new. Best-selling author Josh Kaufman hit this exact wall when he and his wife welcomed their newborn daughter. Between running businesses and intense sleep deprivation, he had this terrifying thought that he would literally never have free time to learn anything ever again. Sound familiar? We've all been there. We look at our schedules and just assume learning is a luxury we can't afford right now. But here's what's actually wild about that assumption. The biggest hurdle isn't your brain's capacity or your calendar, it's the emotional fear of feeling incompetent. We love to tell ourselves it's a time management issue, right? But the truth is much deeper. It's about how it feels to be a beginner. Spoiler alert, it feels pretty awful. But once we recognize that the barrier is emotional, not intellectual, we can actually start to hack the process and motivate ourselves to push through it. Section 1. The 10,000-hour myth. Elite mastery versus rapid competence. Let's absolutely shatter the most intimidating learning myth out there so you can actually get started. The truth is brilliantly simple. Dr. Anderson Erickson's famous 10,000-hour rule is for becoming a world-class grandmaster. But to simply become surprisingly good at a new skill, you only need 20 hours. A giant society-wide game of telephone took Erickson's research on ultra-competitive chess masters and athletes and somehow turned it into it takes 10,000 hours to learn anything. That is a full-time job for 5 years. No wonder it crushes your motivation. But as Kaufman's research highlights, we aren't trying to beat Mozart. We just want to play a song around the campfire. And for that, rapid personal competence, 20 hours is your golden ticket. Now, to actually make those 20 hours count, you need deliberate practice. This means turning potential into reality through highly focused effort. You can't just noodle around aimlessly. Regular practice might be mindless repetition, sure, but deliberate practice requires your absolute full attention. It's purposeful. It's systematic. Basically, it's the difference between driving the exact same route to work every day on autopilot and taking a high-performance stunt driving course. Section 2, the frustration barrier, and why we quit before we start. So if it really only takes a few hours, why on earth do so many of us bail before we even get off the ground? Well, we hit what Kaufman calls the frustration barrier. It's that painful initial period where you know you are doing terribly, and your ego is just screaming at you to stop. This is the learning curve at its steepest and most brutal. You are in the grossly incompetent phase, and worse, you are hyper-aware that you are grossly incompetent. Feeling stupid is literally the ultimate roadblock to sitting down and doing the work. Our natural instinct is to just run away from that discomfort. To survive this brutal phase, you have got to remove all the friction. Seriously, if you have to hunt for your guitar strings or tune your instrument every single time, your motivation is going to vanish. Also, gathering 20 books on a topic isn't learning, it's procrastination disguised as productivity. Just get enough resources to self-correct. And finally, as Tim Ferriss recommends, use a lettuce knife. What that means is start practicing in a way where mistakes have absolutely zero consequences, so your ego stays protected and your motivation stays high. Section 3. The 20-hour rule, or the mathematics of mastery. Okay, we've established the emotional hurdle. So how do we mathematically conquer it? It all comes down to this magical number, 20. By pre-committing to just 20 hours, you are quite literally giving yourself permission to be terrible. You're telling your ego, hey, relax, we're only doing this for 20 hours. This simple pre-commitment is the ultimate motivation hack to get you past that initial frustration. And when you break it down, it's incredibly doable. 20 hours is just 45 minutes a day for a single month. The first week is going to be messy, for sure. But if you stick to your daily 45 minutes, by the end of week 1, that intense emotional frustration totally drops off. By day 30, you hit the 20-hour mark, and you will be absolutely astounded by how good you are. Section 4. Deconstruct and simplify. Breaking down the impossible. Of course, you can't just blindly fiddle around for 20 hours. You need a system to practice efficiently. This is where we bring in the heavy hitters of rapid learning. Tim Ferriss uses the DISSS framework to break massive subjects into tiny, high-value building blocks. That's DSS. Deconstruct, select, Sequence. You identify these smallest learnable units. Then you apply the Pareto principle, finding the 20% of the material that will give you 80% of the results. And finally, you sequence your learning path to completely dodge the things that usually make beginners quit early. Simplifying the impossible like this is a huge motivation hack. For example, playing decades worth of pop songs doesn't require complex theory. Kaufman found you just need 4 basic chords: G, D, E minor, and C. Bam! Instant confidence boost. In chess, champion Josh Waitzkin didn't start with overwhelming opening moves. He actually inverted the sequence. He started with an empty board, just a king and a pawn. This keeps you highly motivated because you are securing quick, early wins without getting bogged down in the quicksand of rote memorization. Once you've broken things down into those sub-skills, try the Feynman technique to guarantee you actually understand them. Named after the Nobel laureate Richard Feynman, this technique forces you to face the music. Try to explain the concept simply enough for a child. If you're learning programming, can you explain the core logic to a 12-year-old? If you can't, you haven't grasped it yet. Writing it down exposes the exact gaps in your understanding so you know precisely what to practice next. If you find yourself having to rely on complex jargon, you've probably just exposed a gap in your own knowledge, which means it's time to go back to the source material. Complexity and big fancy words almost always mask a lack of true understanding. Keeping it simple isn't just about good communication, it's the ultimate test of your own learning. Section 5. Set stakes to stay motivated, forcing the follow-through. Okay, so even with a perfectly simple plan, human logic eventually fails us. You've deconstructed the skill, you've cleared your schedule, but it's day 4, and you just don't feel like doing it. This brings us to the final motivation puzzle piece, loss aversion. This is the psychological phenomenon where losing a $20 bill hurts us way more than finding a $20 bill makes us happy. Relying purely on good intentions is a recipe for failure. We need tangible consequences. So here's the most brutally effective motivation hack out there. Promise a cash donation to an organization you absolutely hate if you skip your 45 minutes of practice. It is brilliant. You're setting up a system where failing to complete your deliberate practice literally costs you money, and it benefits a cause you detest. Suddenly, finding 45 minutes a day to practice those ukulele chords becomes an absolute, non-negotiable priority. You've completely bypassed your lazy ego. You now have the exact frameworks and the mindset you need. So my final question for you is, what amazing thing are you going to tackle over the next month? Remember, the major barrier isn't intellectual, it is entirely emotional. Deconstruct the skill, remove the friction, set some high stakes to force your follow-through, and just put in the 20 hours. You definitely have the time. The only thing left to decide is what you are going to master first.